I thank the Chairman and the Committee for this opportunity to discuss the development of the Irish hemp industry. My name is Chris Allen. I am the Director of Hemp Federation Ireland, Ireland's national hemp industry stakeholder body. I am joined today by my colleague Marcus John McCabe, who is a member of our Advisory Board on Agriculture. He is an organics and permaculture expert and has grown and processed more than 80% of all hemp grown in Ireland over the past 2 decades. The Irish hemp industry is one of the oldest in the European Union, with a small but fully operational supply chain since the 1990s. Irish hemp farmers and industry operators are among Europe's leading industry authorities. Europe's oldest dedicated hemp retail outlet is also situated in Dublin. There are 9 EU statutory instruments establishing the legal basis for the operation of the European agricultural market in hemp and hemp-derived products, all of which are immediately applicable to Ireland. Article 34 of TFEU further protects the integrity of the operation of the single market in hemp and derived products. In addition, there are 3 EU Court of Justice rulings going back to 2008, all of which positively clarify various aspects of the operation of the EU hemp market. The THC content in hemp is not illegal under Irish misuse of drugs legislation as a direct consequence of the primacy of EU law. Ireland's Department of Agriculture support for Commission regulations establishing the EU hemp industry has driven the development of the Irish hemp sector since the 1970s. Indeed, during Ireland's presidency of the EU in 2004, the extension of trade in hemp between member states was a priority for Ireland's then Fianna Fáil Minister for Agriculture, Joe Walsh. Mr Walsh secured EU regulatory amendments which would serve to extend the operation of the EU agricultural hemp markets into the future. In November 2020, a particularly clear European Court of Justice decision in case C66318, also known as the Canavate ruling, again confirmed the legality and the scientific safety of hemp and derived products in Europe. The supremacy of the EU Court of Justice in interpreting both EU law and the treaties is acknowledged by Ireland and by all Irish regulators. Indeed, on October 20th, 2021, Minister for State at the Department of Foreign Affairs, Deputy Thomas Byrne, advised the Oireachtas Committee of Ireland's policy in this regard as follows. As EU member states, there is an onus on us all to comply with determinations of the European Court of Justice with a view to maintaining our shared legal order. As part of membership of the Union, it is also essential that member states accept the primacy of European Union law, which is a principle of the European Union going back to a time prior to when Ireland became a member. The EU Commission website carries the following clarifying information on hemp. Hemp, Cannabis sativa lin, is a species in the Cannabaceae family in which the level of tetrahydrocannabinol is very low. According to the provisions under the Common Agricultural Policy, hemp is grown primarily for its industrial uses, and there are 75 different hemp varieties registered in the EU catalogue. Due to the very low level of THC, hemp complying with the provisions of the CAP is not used to produce narcotic drugs. Much of the present confusion in Ireland regarding hemp is a result of the transfer of primary responsibility for the agricultural hemp sector to the Department of Health. Much of the discourse emerging from the Health Committee discussions on medicinal cannabis in relation to our farm crop and products adds to this confusion. In November 2016, Dr. Lorraine Nolan of the HPRA appeared before the Oireachtas Health Committee to discuss access to medicinal cannabis. In her opening statement, she advises that cannabis is prohibited other than in specific circumstances where all activities relating to the cultivation, manufacture and supply of cannabis and products containing THC are subject to licence. However, the licensing procedures described by Dr. Nolan above apply only to cannabis and have never applied to the trace amounts of 0.2% THC naturally found in agricultural hemp. Medicines and foods exist in entirely separate regulatory frameworks. In 2017, Dr. Nolan again attends the Oireachtas Health Committee to discuss access to medicinal cannabis. On this occasion, Mr Eugene Lennon, Principal Officer in the Medicines and Controlled Drugs Unit in the Department of Health, was also in attendance. Mr Lennon, having brought up the subject of hemp food supplements, is responding to a follow-up question from the committee chairman, who asks, is there an acceptable level of THC? Mr Lennon replies, as the law stands, only trace amounts of THC are acceptable. Otherwise, it becomes a controlled drug and a licence is required. It is very clear that as the law stands, produce derived from the EU CAP regulated farm crop was never considered to fall within the scope of the Irish Misuse of Drugs Law's regulatory framework, these products were never subject to HPRA licence. In fact, in 2019, Hemp Federation Ireland asked if HPRA would licence agricultural foods with trace amounts of THC. The HPRA replied in writing that they did not, and did not envisage a situation where they ever would issue a licence, as HPRA does not consider hemp-derived foods containing trace amounts of THC to fall within the scope of Irish Misuse of Drugs regulatory framework. From an agricultural perspective, the EU Commission formally recognises the capacity of the hemp industry to meet EU CAP, farm to fork and climate policy objectives. The financial benefits of hemp cultivation to EU farmers and rural communities are also highlighted by the Commission, and in both of these contexts, the Commission advises that all uses of hemp are important to consider when we look at the future development of the EU industry. In 2021, hemp was included in Article 75 of the CMO regulation by the Commission. The THC content in EU hemp in the field will go to 0.3% in January 2023. A Commission regulation establishing EU authorised limits for THC in hemp foods in Europe is already written and goes to final stage scrutiny before the EU Committee on Plant and Animal Food and Feed next week. The Commission's support for the exceptional competencies of the hemp plant are very important considerations at this seminal moment of transformation in agricultural systems and practices. Europe is leading global efforts to tackle climate change under land use change and forestry. The EU Carbon Cycles Initiative is specifically geared to provide a basis for global buy-in. It envisages a globally operational carbon cycles framework going forward. The objective is to completely reform land use management, our systems of agricultural food production, and to repair our soils. The second remit for our farmers under the scheme is to grow biomass, which will green global industries, providing new fibre materials to replace fossil carbon. The carbon cycle system is designed hierarchically, with high protein, low energy vegetable food production at the top of the cascade. The world is witnessing the birth of a new currency, a new means of exchange backed by carbon reserves which farmers will hold in their lands. Hemp sequesters more CO2 than any forest can, and it is also the most complete plant-based protein known to man. In every context of the carbon cycle cascade, this crop is beyond compare. These competencies must be fully integrated at every point along the supply chain, from farm to fork and from seed to industrial solution, integrating farming and industrial practice at local level for a carbon-neutral Irish, EU and global economy. Hemp is one of the most valuable agricultural commodities in the context of carbon budgets and in the context of climate change. The EU Commission, global corporations and global banks have called repeatedly for European member states to ensure the Carbon Cycles programme is launched in a completely open, honest, ethical and transparent way, so as to inspire farmers with confidence and security in the transition process. The EU Commission has insisted over and over again at the very highest level that the economic benefits of the new system must go directly to farmers, and that those economic benefits must constitute additional farm incomes. As the rollout of the EU Carbon Cycle Initiative gets underway across Europe, in Ireland, earlier applications of unlawful economic sanctions by the Department of Agriculture and SBCI Bank have enabled the Department of Agriculture to now propose a development plan for our industry, where 2/3 of our traditional incomes no longer. Hemp Federation Federation Ireland would like to expand on how the environmental aspects of this industry actually function and how the industry should be developed to best capture the fully integrated environmental, economic and social returns for our country. Today, our submission, however, must focus on the extraordinary regulation of the hemp industry in Ireland since 2018. From that time, almost every rule and regulation governing the operation of our industry has been changed without prior consultation or subsequent explanation. This was achieved by suspending Ireland's observance of EU laws in direct and indirect ways, steering all conversations away from the agricultural and environmental potentials of this crop. The Oireachtas record shows that the long-standing official representation of the hemp industry by Irish ministers for agriculture changed suddenly and dramatically in 2019. All mention of our food produce is removed and the Misuse of Drugs Act is invoked for the first time alongside terms such as strictest levels of control. This change effectively rebrands hemp as cannabis and transfers responsibility for our agricultural industry from the Department of Agriculture to the Department of Health. The Department of Health then began transforming the regulatory framework surrounding our agricultural markets and supply chains in consultation with pharmaceutical and tobacco companies. No regard was ever shown for democratic principles throughout. None of the regulatory interventions have ever been justified by science, as is required by EU law, and as a result, our national farm-based sector is no longer able to function. The Irish farmers and operators encouraged into the sector by previous ministers for agriculture with the support of government departments and agencies are now facing 14-year prison sentences for possessing the very same cap-regulated farm crops they were previously encouraged to embrace. The lobbying returns show that throughout this entire time, Irish ministers, party leaders, senior civil servants and successive ministers for health were all the while engaging in consultations on hemp with Global Tobacco Corporation now repositioning to capture the emerging global hemp markets. These same public officials have consistently refused to engage with Irish hemp farmers and business owners operating in the sector for decades, the people who built this agricultural industry and earn their livings in the sector. In 2020, commercial control over all elements of our agricultural crop, our farm revenues and our industry value chain was transferred by the Department of Business to pharmaceutical companies. Enterprise Ireland removed all access to state enterprise supports from all Irish hemp farms and businesses, including COVID-19 supports. Only pharmaceutical companies can now access any business support for any commercial activity related to any part of the EU hemp crop in Ireland. When questioned in the Dáil as to whether the industry bodies were consulted beforehand, the then Minister for Finance replied that the Minister for Health decides who the relevant stakeholders are. Many such issues are described in detail in Hemp Federation Ireland's letter of September 2021 to the Secretary-General of the Department of Agriculture, which is available on our website. I've provided below some examples for the information of the committee. To close, the EU hemp industry is protected under primary EU regulations, Article 34 of TFEU, and by 3 separate CJEU decisions. The operators who work in the sector, on our farms and in shops and businesses throughout Ireland are entitled to the protections afforded to all EU citizens under the EU Charter of Fundamental Rights. I hope this committee will be able to protect the Irish hemp industry and prevent the further transfer of our industry to pharmaceutical companies before the pending High Court review of the matter is decided in Ireland in July. I thank the committee for their time and attention in understanding what is a difficult and complex situation.
Thank you very much.